places and feel confident they have put your health and safety first.
Look for the Well Health Safety Seal.
Look for the Well Health Safety Seal.
Look for the Well Health Safety Seal.
I'm Dr. Richard Carmona, the 17th Surgeon General of the United States of America. This is the Well Health Safety Seal from the International Well Building Institute, the global authority on healthy buildings.
The Well Health Safety Rating was informed by years of research and input from hundreds of leading virologists, public health experts, epidemiologists, and building professionals around the world.
You'll see it at schools, offices, banks, childcare centers, all the places we go.
The Well Health Safety Seal means that we'll feel better going into restaurants,
Theaters, stores, hotels,
Stadiums, and all the places that we love.
Everything may look the same, but the Well Health Safety Seal means that your health and safety are top of mind when it comes to
cleaning and sanitizing procedures,
Air and water quality management,
Emergency preparedness programs,
and health services.
So look for the Well Health Safety Seal outside
and feel more confident going inside. Learn more about the Well Health.
You know, at first I thought, what in the New World Order hell is this? And then I thought, you know, it has to be trustworthy because they have a whole bunch of celebrities using generic, generalized, empty slogans. Celebrities that, of course, will say and do anything for a buck. So, yeah. Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. This is Luke Radowski of WeAreChange.org. And today's news is as insane as Lady Gaga's wardrobe, as, of course, we have many of the most trusted mainstream media medical experts, quote, freaking out with what's happening in New York comparatively to what's happening in Texas. Lots of very important news for context there. There's even more concerning news about the rushed experimental shot, which we're going to be getting into, as the UK government is preparing to start a campaign telling you not to hug each other. Meanwhile, in Belgium, it looks like they are going to be doing the opposite approach and lifting all lockdowns and restrictions. But serious question before we begin, why would someone dress up like a witch to then lecture us about our health and well-being and this new, quote, health and safety effort launched by this international corporation that most likely has a lot of ties to the big corporate banking class? And if you go to the website of this latest effort that these celebritards are pushing, especially Deepak Chopra, I mean, at least feed the man if you're going to have him shill for your cause. What happened? That's just a serious question that I have. But when you go to the website of this larger initiative being pushed by, again, a lot of these celebritards, you just have very bland, generic language talking about just health and safety that's flexible, verified, scalable, accessible. Again, not much details into what's going on here, but when you look at the partnership programs that they're working with, whether it's JP Morgan and Chase, the NIH, a lot of sports ball teams that they're working in cooperation with, you could assume that this most likely has something to do with the track, trace, and database data collection effort, along, of course, with pushing for medical passports and implementing more restrictive protocols for daily life. We see the San Antonio Spurs, an NBA basketball team that has been leading the charge against the governor of Texas recently, as 3 weeks ago we had the head coach of the San Antonio Spurs launch a media offensive against the governor, saying that him lifting lockdowns and mask mandates is mystifying, ignorant, and alluded that this would lead to tremendous human suffering. And 3 weeks after making those declarations, it's fair to say that he was absolutely wrong, as we have this latest article by Newsweek that talks about after getting rid of the mask mandates, after getting rid of the lockdowns, cases have dropped to record lows in nearly 3 weeks. Meanwhile, the states with some of the most restrictive control measures, lockdowns, and decrees issued by their governors, who are usually in hot water and facing very serious charges against them, like the governors of Michigan and New York, where we are seeing cases absolutely surging. And again, this highlights what we've been talking about for months now, and that is how we've been telling everyone how, as well as documenting it, how the lockdowns seem absolutely counterproductive and to be doing more harm than actual good. And this latest situation that's unfolding right now in the United States, according to the Daily Beast, is freaking out the medical experts, the same medical experts that have been pushing and calling for strict lockdowns, for strict government control of our daily lives, who can't explain what's happening here. And as the article reads, quote, even though New York has one of the strictest mask mandates in the country, and 1/3 of the population has received a dose of the shot for this sickness, infection rates are rising faster than any other state in the United States. There's also a very interesting phenomenon happening right now with many of the states that are using and implementing the shots for this sickness the most, also in correlation seeing the highest rise in this sickness. Well, what's going on here? Well, it seems like no one really knows, but we're going to be discussing it in this video from an independent media organization that likes to question the prevailing logic and anything that the mainstream media is trying to push on to you, including, of course, the very restrictive measures and extortion efforts like we've seen in the state of New York that has already implemented medical passports and is extorting businesses, telling them that they could only open 100% fully if they implement this medical passport system, as we've seen some restaurants and even Madison Square Garden implement. I think this also might be in part what this health safety organization is pushing, but I didn't have time to do the full research on it. I will later on today, and most likely we'll be tweeting about it here on Luke We Are Change on Twitter. And also, before we begin, don't forget to sign up on our email list, top right-hand corner of wearechange.org. The link is also down in the description below, along with, of course, with our t-shirt store, which is doing extremely well right now, and where you could pick up shirts like the one that I'm wearing right now, telling people to be careful not to spread fake news, and that they should leave that up to the professionals who do that so well. You can get that shirt, plus a lot more, socks, phone cases, hats, you name it, we got it. Even some shirts that we can't show you here, all on thebestpoliticalshirts.com. The link, of course, is also in the description. Click on it right now, because I think you'll definitely enjoy and be entertained by our intriguing collection, to say the least. Now, before we get into our main topic today, there's also a lot of other news that's important to note, to talk about here, that usually doesn't get a lot of attention on mainstream media. One of these stories that I think represents that is this latest development from the Department of Justice that quietly has acknowledged that there was actually no sedition at the U.S. Capitol, which again is quite the contrary to a lot of the mainstream media narrative that we've been hearing about it ever since that date. But as of right now, none of the people involved with that event have been charged with sedition. One of the most serious charges that we are seeing is assault. Some have been charged with conspiracy and obstruction, but we have to acknowledge here that the charges that the DOJ is pushing against some of these people, specifically the charges being pushed on them by the Biden DOJ, that are presenting a case that almost directly contradicts what a lot of the mainstream media has been talking about. Now, when the U.S. security state is not going after its own citizens, it's also important to note here that it is working at becoming more woke, and now, according to Politico, more green, as the Joe Biden administration is launching an initiative to try to make the Pentagon to go green. It's also important to note during this time that the U.S. military is one of the largest polluters in the entire world, which has been an inconvenient fact to a lot of environmentalists and global warming activists that don't really like to talk about that for some strange reason. But it looks like the Biden administration is trying to address this by trying to make the military go electric and to use biofuel. Now, it's also important to note here and to remind people that the use of electricity, especially even just using some of the latest battery technology, has also been extremely harmful to the planet, especially mining for a lot of the special resources needed for this. But as the US military focuses on going woke and green, other militaries like the Chinese and Russian military, well, they're developing and expanding their military might as much as they can, as of course China becomes more emboldened and aggressive against the United States. This, of course, as China just warned the United States over a red line that they are drawing, specifically when it comes to an American ambassador making their first visit to Taiwan after 42 years. The United States also sells a lot of its weapons to Taiwan, with China specifically telling the United States that they must stop and refrain from having any relations with Taiwan at all. It will be very interesting to see how the United States will respond to this, since of course the US Secretary of State just recently said that China is right to criticize US human rights. Yes, the Secretary of State, after being criticized by China of all countries, acknowledged their criticism and said the United States needs to address, quote, profound inequities, including systemic racism. Now, when I think of racism, I think there's a lot to say about China, but I'll save that for another video. Tensions also between the United States and Russia are looking like it's coming to an all-time low, as the United States declared its, quote, unwavering support for Ukraine, while the Russians decided to flood Crimea with a train full of tanks. This, of course, after more strong words by the Secretary of State that continues to alienate Russia, a country that, according to many geopolitical strategists, could be the perfect third party to keep China in check. Now, again, China and Russia do have a lot of close relationships, but a lot of those relationships are due to their tensions with, of course, the United States. But hey, this is not a geopolitical video. We will most likely make another one talking about these topics extensively later on this week. Let me know if you're interested in them or not. But I think it's definitely very fair to say that the United States is becoming a weaker country, not only physically with the obesity rates rapidly increasing, processed foods becoming the new norm, addicting people to them as if they were drugs themselves, some food filled, of course, with also glyphosate and other chemicals that international organizations recognize as bad, while the EPA allows them and hides that information from the consumer. All of this while, according to some scientific studies, 9 out of 10 deaths related to the sickness are from obesity. All of this while in the United States, a country whose president openly called for immigrants to come into this country. When they have, they put them in cages. And now, in some places, like in San Diego, migrants are going to be taking up homeless shelters, while, of course, American citizens are going to be kicked out of them. All, of course, to the tune of $10,000 to the American taxpayer per detainee entering the country without even needing a test, while most Americans entering legally do need a test. Again, just more insane government policies that just seem to be getting crazier by the day, as perfectly exemplified in the United Kingdom, where the government is preparing a campaign telling people not to hug each other. Yep, the government's response towards everything that's happening right now is to waste taxpayers' money telling people not to hug each other while pushing all of their hopes in a rushed experimental shot that the mainstream media keeps reporting on as if they're just copy and pasting their press releases from the pharma industrial complex, as perfectly exemplified by this New York Times article that later on acknowledges from their very friendly headline to Pfizer that, of course, the data has not been independently verified by other experts. Now, all of this and just a whole bunch of shenanigans and people playing party politics, rather than, of course, talk about diet, obesity, vitamin D, how these lockdowns are absolutely having the counter effect that people claimed they would, is absolutely foolish. It's foolish to put your faith in the pharma industrial complex that even according to them might not work, as represented by this Associated Press article that's reporting how the World Health Organization and the United Nations are saying that this shot may not work against different variants. The Guardian is reporting that there's going to be a new shot that's going to be needed. Pfizer is even acknowledging that its shot is, quote, 90% effective, and that it's, quote, effective for at least 6 months. A lot of the shot records that are given out have 2 other empty slots associated with them. All the while, big pharma companies that don't have the best track record, like Johnson & Johnson, which, by the way, is delaying a major portion of their shots because of, quote, mishaps. The same company that also previously lost legal battles in major victim compensation suits. This doesn't really breed a lot of confidence in the system, and it shouldn't to anyone paying attention. And it looks like in almost every single instance when the government intervened, it actually made the situation a lot worse, as acknowledged by recently a Belgium high court that ruled that all the restrictions, all the lockdowns have to be lifted within 30 days. This, of course, after a major lawsuit from the League for Human Rights, which was filed several weeks ago, that specifically challenged the Belgian government implementation of decrees which were done without any form of representative government. Again, a lot of the lockdowns are done through decrees, and not, of course, through the proper political legal measures. A lot of them are enforced by police officers not questioning the legal legitimate authority, which many times is just a decree rather than an actual law. The Belgian court recognized that. Now the Belgian government is going to, of course, be countering this major court case, but providing a legal basis or an example that it is justified to put out such restrictive decrees that many people have akin to martial law is going to be very difficult for the Belgium state. Now, the Belgium government is trying to pass a law that would codify this, but of course, this is a pretty major decision after, of course, massive protests have been unfolding all throughout Europe against the lockdowns, which have been predominantly underreported in the Western mainstream media. Again, lots of preliminary data highlighting and showing, not just suggesting how the lockdowns are absolutely counterproductive. They cause a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, not just economically, but with the mental health of the citizenry. The Associated Press is now acknowledging this, as we've been screaming about it for months now, since, of course, the data was always there. The Associated Press just ran an article a few days ago highlighting how this sickness is absolutely not being affected by the governors either imposing a very strict lockdown or no lockdowns at all. So to do lockdowns that only benefit the billionaires and hurt everyone else should have everyone legitimately questioning it. Everyone who is wrong needs to apologize. The mainstream media needs to run clarifications, especially from their latest fear-mongering attempts, telling you that all hell would break loose if you were able to shop at your local mom and pop store instead of course, Amazon and Walmart. And that's essentially what they're arguing here. And all of the mainstream media institutions that YouTube prioritizes, that YouTube puts in front of this channel, that YouTube puts in the search results, were absolutely wrong. A large swath of the independent media was right. And according to my own personal opinion, these lockdowns are absolutely absurd and they need to stop immediately. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know down in the comment section below. I always appreciate your feedback. I always appreciate your constructive criticism. I always appreciate just being able to have the conversation. I check in the comments whenever I can. I always have fun reading them. Just a reminder that all the LukeUncensored.com videos will be sent out in the email list. So if you're signed up on LukeUncensored.com, you will now, through our email list, get the direct URL to the video so you don't need to log in to check when the video's there. Again, lots of spicy comment. I went off in yesterday's video. I had a lot of fun making it. A lot of people are really enjoying this other format where I'm able to actually get into some of the deeper stuff. LukeUncensored.com. Thank you so much for sharing this video, being here with me. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you, and this is why. I love you guys. Stay tuned for more here on wearechange.org.